That looks funny. Oh, I can't see that screen anymore, but it looks funny there. Hi, welcome to Cunts Get to Peace. I'm Haley. So, season 2, I said I would make it a little bit different. It's sort of more of an analytical perspective. It's a little true crime, a little rom-com-esque, because in sobriety, that's kind of what got me through the loneliness of sobriety. I had to cut off a lot of friends, and I had a lot of time on my hands suddenly. I didn't know that when you weren't passed out for 6 hours of the day, it was so much longer. Cool. Oh, welcome. This season, we're focusing on what I call outdated submissive genetic coding, or just outdated genetic coding, because I mean, the submissive part is for the women, and then I kind of go into the men stuff too. But I want to talk about, those famous cases you might have looked at, like Sweet Bobby, or if you can think of any women really were in situations where they were paired up with men that didn't quite seem like that fit, and you didn't quite understand why it was happening, or why women tend to make themselves a little bit small or very small for men. They're just that you feel like that's not even like your level. I kind of just hyper fixated on that, and I don't know. So last year there were a lot of documentaries like Sweet Bobby, Bad Vegan, Bad Surgeon. These were men that had taken advantage of really successful women. And I just kind of like went ham on that and looked at all these documentaries, and then I listened to the podcast, and I wanted to understand a little bit more because it didn't make sense. These women that were wildly successful were just being so incredibly dumb when it came to kind of seeing the signs. And I was like, but I've been there too. And honestly, if you talk to any of your girlfriends, they've been there too. Where everyone can see the flags but the person. You kind of just go, what actually happens? Apart from the fact that you're like, this person's romanticizing the idea of ending up with somebody or whatever. Fine. Fair enough. But at some cases, it's so extreme, it actually seems like a psychosis. And I'm here to argue that I do, in fact, think it is a psychosis. I think it's an outdated genetic coding that is signaling in a world where it's no longer serving or protecting women. I'll tell you first what I think the outdated submissive genetic coding is. It would be the impulse to submit to any man, which we today blame on the fear of being alone, when in truth, it's darker than that. The extreme example being if you weren't married off, you were as good as dead, and often carried the safety of your family on your back as a woman and had the responsibility to secure a good marriage. The extreme jealousy you might see in women when, a woman gets really angry at another woman engaging her spouse romantically. Sure, it might stem from genuine affection towards that significant other. There might be a sense of betrayal, of course, but mostly it's rooted in fear and a deafening, outdated alarm that goes off, cautioning her that should she lose this partner, she's done for. And honestly, yeah, you can relate to that, right? As far as status or just being perceived as a failure if you didn't make a marriage work. Why are we that afraid of it to the point where you're willing to cosplay a successful marriage? Of course, today in most parts of the world, it's not true that your whole life will come undone if you were to exit a marriage. Should your boyfriend or husband end your relationship and pursue another, you might be heartbroken, but it'll rarely result in your entire life going up in flames, unless, of course, you were financially dependent on him, in which case, understandably, the alarm may not have been so outdated for you in particular, but generally, it'll result in a broken heart, not a broken life. For men, you might have guessed it, they also have outdated genetic signals that no longer really have a place. The less evolved men tend to listen to the coding that informs them that a woman must submit to them, and the reason behind it, much like the hairs on the back of our neck stands when we're in the presence of a psychopath. In an episode of Dr. House, he suggested that we had Darwin to thank for that. That we normies tend to get the creeps around psychopaths or sociopaths when we start clocking their lack of remorse and impulse to manipulate those around them. The creeps we experience is an actual medical phenomenon and likely an evolved response to predators, which to me is much like women's evolved, quote unquote, evolved response to the ironically outdated genetic coding to submit to men to survive. By the time we developed that evolved response, that was what was killing us, being men or not successfully securing a marriage. The times had started to change. You can see examples of this, and in my book, I wrote a book. It's called A Cunt's Guide to Peace. I get to develop and discuss these things on my podcast because it's fun and I get feedback from you guys, but I thought I would focus on that chapter. So that's what the outdated genetic coding is. And now that you have an idea of my thesis, I wanted to analyze Bad Vegan with you. So that's a documentary that came out on Netflix called Bad Vegan. Love control and why your nervous system fell for a man named Shane. So we're going to analyze this. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Here's the thing. On my podcast, on these episodes, we're not going to go too much in depth on the actual story of it. I want to summarize it just enough for you to kind of follow my analysis and kind of argument for this outdated genetic coding. So I'm going to give you an idea of what happened in this documentary, and then it's just really a foundation for me to kind of present this argument for you of the outdated genetic coding. Okay. All right. So today's episode is inspired by the Netflix documentary Bad Vegan, Fame, Fraud, Fugitive. If you haven't seen it, don't worry. I've watched it with my full frontal cortex and my lizard brain engaged. I'm here to translate. This episode isn't about veganism. It's not even really about fraud. It is about why a powerful, intelligent woman slowly handed her life over to a man who types in riddles. What Bad Vegan is actually about. So Bad Vegan tells a story about Sarma Menjalis. Oh, I'm butchering her name. I tried so hard to get it, but I'll type it out for you. Sarma was highly intelligent, articulate, attractive, emotionally reserved in that very New York way, and wildly successful, and also from a really successful family. She came from a well-off family, so she came with status. She started with status, but to boot, she was also very business savvy. Co-owned Pure Food and Wine, one of the most famous high-end vegan restaurants in New York City. Celebrities ate there, critics loved it. It was an aspirational veganism, less lentils, more linen trousers. Sarma was respected, independent, financially successful. In other words, not your stereotypical vulnerable woman. My note when we were getting the intro to her in this documentary was that she is Sex and the City. Look, I'm dating myself, but I grew up watching Sex and the City, and she was very much Sarah Jessica Parker. She was that person in Upper West Side, and she was just so chic and elegant, effortlessly elegant, and approachable, not like elitist in an obnoxious way, but you could see she came from a very respected, elegant background, and it's incredibly heartbreaking to watch the documentary because she just starts off with all the best cards in the world to win. Comes from a good family, and on top of that, she's so smart. She starts this really successful business, and then slowly you pull your hair out as you just watch this man completely dismantle her life. Anyway, let's continue. So, who's the man? Anthony Strangus, aka Shane Fox. Sarma meets Anthony Strangus online. He initially presents himself as charming, intellectually curious, slightly odd, spiritually inclined. He later begins calling himself Shane Fox, which is already kind of a choice, but okay. At first, it's flirtatious, then romantic, then intense. Very quickly, Anthony introduces a new narrative that he is part of a higher intelligence system, that he is testing Sarma, that she's special, she's chosen, she's exceptional, and crucially, that if she trusts in him completely, he can unlock mortality, protection, and greatness, not just for her, but for her dog. Yeah, the dog is important. Hold on to that. The gradual takeover. Okay, so Anthony doesn't just start by asking for everything. He starts very small. Secrecy, loyalty, obedience framed as tests, isolation from others, reframing doubt as failure. He convinces Sarma to transfer money, to drain business accounts, to lie to staff and investors, to cut off people who question him. Millions of dollars leave the restaurant and go straight to his pocket. Employees go unpaid. The business collapses, this very successful business that she built herself. And Sarma, once a public figure, disappears. She and Anthony are later found living under aliases, gambling in casinos, on the run. Eventually, they're arrested. The documentary asks the obvious question: how did this happen? So what people think this is about. Most reactions to Bad Vegan falls into two camps. She's a victim, she's complicit, and the internet, being the internet, chooses violence. But neither frame really explains the mechanism. Because Sarma wasn't desperate, uneducated, financially trapped, socially powerless. So why did she submit? Why did she obey? Why did she stay? Well, here is where we're going to introduce my argument. The outdated submissive genetic coding in women. Women carry an ancient survival alarm. Historically, if a woman did not secure a male bond, she wasn't just lonely, she was unsafe, unprotected, disposable. Marriage wasn't romance, it was existential security. So women evolved a deep biological mechanism that says, if this man promises protection, trust him. Even if that promise sounds unhinged. Even if it arrives via text messages at 3 a.m. Even if it involves mortality and a dog named Leon. This alarm doesn't sound like fear. It sounds like destiny, intuition, certainty. I just know. And once it becomes triggered, logic becomes optional. The dog. Why did the dog matter? Anthony didn't just promise Sarma safety. He promised her dog would live forever. The detail matters more than people actually realize because to an ancient nervous system, dependence equals survival responsibility. Historically, if you failed to protect what depended on you, you didn't just lose love, you lost worth. So when Anthony framed obedience as, do this or your dog suffers, he wasn't just appealing to delusion, he was activating maternal survival wiring. That's not stupidity, that's biology. Now you can argue the way that people baby their pets is another problem, but I feel like that's another episode. You have to see how he's strategically inserting himself into everything she already values, everything that she already finds love and security in. I'll ramble later. Men and their outdated signals. So Anthony is not a mastermind. He's not especially intelligent. He's not particularly charismatic. He sounds really obnoxious in the documentary. You hear recordings in it, and I highly recommend that you watch it. He sounds irritating and arrogant, like a bully. But he does one thing flawlessly. He speaks with absolute certainty. It's like he did this by accident at some point in his life when he was younger. And he was like, wait a minute, that worked? You know what I mean? And then he just kept doing it. And then he got better at it. And it's like he clocked that ancient wiring in women that gets triggered. And honestly, your jaw's on the floor when you listen to this, when you watch this documentary and you listen to how he talks to her. You're like, who the fuck are you talking to? He's horrible. Anyway, less evolved men feel an unexamined confidence that they should lead, they should be obeyed. Questioning them is disloyal. That confidence once had evolutionary value. Now it just gets people Netflix documentaries. Anthony never negotiated. He just tested. And Sarma's submission was mistaken by him as proof of destiny. So, the irony. Women evolved submission to survive men. Men evolved dominance to survive chaos. But by the time those traits fully took hold, society changed. And now, submission can look like self-betrayal. Dominance can masquerade as spiritual authority. And obedience can be framed as love, which is how a man named Shane convinced a successful woman to destroy her own life. So, what, in conclusion, I guess, after all this rambling, like I said, I just do kind of broad strokes to give you an idea of what this documentary was, to fully kind of understand how extremely strategic this was on his part. You'd have to watch the documentary, and there's actually a podcast that analyzes this as well, and you should look at that too. I like using these extreme cases. This happens all the time, by the way. I can name 3 friends. I won't because they'll shoot me, but I can name several friends that are actively submitting and making them smaller for men that just, I don't know how they made it this far in life. I mean that. It's not that I detest them. It's that I genuinely question how they were able to get past puberty with how stupid they are. And the fact that the dance that kind of happens is that, like, with these extremely successful, you don't even have to be extremely successful. Honestly, again, the only reason I brought that up is because the contrast is more evident that way. Meaning, like, Sarma having had a really successful family, but, you know, even if she had a really successful family, she created an amazing restaurant that had the best reputation. She was business savvy. She would have been successful regardless. And he completely picked that apart. He was like a parasite. So I don't know at what stage the alarm to me on all the documentaries that I watched and analyzed and seen, oh wait, my theory makes sense here. It makes sense here too. And it makes sense here too. This was possibly the worst one. It was absolutely the worst one because her family loves her so much. There is a scene in the documentary where, you know, he's completely just destroyed her mind and her self-worth at this point. He has the restaurant. He's convinced her to take money out of her restaurant to the point where the employees go unpaid. These employees love her, by the way. You should see in the documentary the beautiful things they say about her. So they really tried. They really tried, and they had to like protest to get their money. They had to drag her name down because she just wouldn't give them their wages. We were talking months and months and months because he was taking it. There's a meeting at the restaurant, and he walks in, Shane, scam artist, the rom-con artist that is destroying Sarma's life, instead of Sarma, the boss. And he announces that he is now the manager of the restaurant. There's been no talk about this, by the way. No, this has gone through none of the investors, none of the people at the managers at the restaurant. Nobody knows about this. He just walks in one day and says, Sarma's not going to be running the restaurant anymore. I am. You're going to report to me, and this is how we're going to do things. He's just a complete parasite. And after he's hijacked her life, and they're on the run now, they're in Vegas for a period of time. It gets to the point where like now they're fleeing, right? And they're in Vegas, and he is now having her family send money, lots of money, because again, she comes from money, right? So the mom's giving 10K, the dad is sending 10K, and the humiliation that he brought her life and her family, and they don't know what to do either, because she just sounds so gone. Not gone like, like she can't talk or anything, but it's like she's completely vacant from her own life. And you have to wonder, the reason that I find it to be one of the worst ones is because it's like he completely muted her. And I kept wondering, what are you trying to gain from this? What are you hoping to prove for him, to Shane? What does he represent, actually, that you are this submissive, that you're letting him just absolutely run over your entire life? Because he doesn't come with security, right? She's attractive. He's hideous. You should look at him. He looks like an ogre. He looks like Shrek. He's just really manipulative. That's it. It's not even so. It's not even that. It's not even the Prince Charming thing. There's nothing he offers but that he just completely scrambled her brain. How is that possible to do? And I got really, really curious, because this was just, the worst case of completely dragging someone down from status that I'd ever seen. He absolutely threw her to nobody will ever invest in her again. She'll never run a restaurant again. Nobody will take her word for anything ever again. Even if they did, not for the fact that she's not a savvy businesswoman. She is. She obviously is. You just can't trust her, because look what someone was able to do to her. Right? And which is really sad. Like, it sucks that was done to her, where she was manipulated out of her own success and whatever. And on that part, you can absolutely empathize with her 100%. But from a business standpoint, you have to be tough, right? If you're asking me for X amount of money, and I'm going to be like, okay, here, I'm going to put all this into your business, because I know you know how to make this business successful. But then enter Shane or whoever, because you're so submissive, right? Or you have something to prove to a man that you think offers what. So that's what I'm analyzing, because she gave up her whole life. And towards the end of should I spoil this for you? Just spoiler alert. Towards the end of the documentary, after he's bankrupted her at this point. Her family will help her out, obviously, but her name is dead. Towards the end of the documentary, actually in the beginning of the documentary, you hear him talking. She says, listen, they're going to do this Netflix documentary. He's like, you have to stop it. It's another test, his dumb shit. He keeps using her dog as a tool to manipulate her, and he's just figured out that that's his way in. And he's like, you have to stop it. It's a test. There's always this vague they that he never quite, they never reveal themselves, of course. And he said, you have to they are not okay with this. You have to stop it. And then in the end of it, the documentary happens, and at the end of the documentary, they're talking. Again, she serves time. She goes to prison for what he did. And even then, after all of this, she still talks to him. And as a woman, you're as a human, I think you're just left watching the documentary going, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm saying this is what's wrong with her. This is what's wrong with her. That alarm of submit or you'll die, he clocked it. Walked her like a dog with it. It's the only thing that makes sense. To me, it makes sense. Just don't think I'm wrong. But in this season of A Cunt's Guide to Peace, I give you several cases where, again, the contrast will be evident just because the women will be very successful. So you can see why. The reason I do that is because it's to highlight that these women don't need the man to support them. I'm taking away what the man would bring to the table to offer you evidence of the psychosis that I think is real. Sarma absolutely did not need a man. She could not work a day in her life and she'd be fine. She didn't need to work. She just was savvy and smart and creative. She was a useful, functional, contributing member of society, and he completely destroyed that. Everybody else that I bring up in this series, also in this season, they're women that don't need men, technically, for what they serve, for how that setup was in the past, where a woman needed a man for protection, shelter, food, all those things. These women don't need that today, and that's why I give you these kind of situations, right? These kind of documentaries, and I give you a reference to documentaries that you can watch, so you can analyze it yourself and apply my thesis to it, because it's the only thing that makes sense. They didn't need him. They didn't need the men for anything, except all I can think of is that submissive genetic coding that just about caught up as times change are now misfiring and giving you the wrong information. Submit or you'll die. No, submit and you'll die. But I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I think you just have to kind of take what I say to you and see if you agree, because I'm just out to have a conversation about it. I'm just excited because I think it makes sense. But anyway, that was it. That was Bad Vegan. It's still on Netflix. You should watch it, and then you should write me and tell me what you thought. And I want you to tell me that I was right. Okay, thanks. Bye.